I am never upset for the reason I think.
And I think that anybody who's had a tough divorce can kind of, or a long, tough divorce can kind of identify this. I know you've had a couple. I'm not sure how they were.
Jeez.
In there?
Yeah.
What?
There's a little bronze colored.
Oh, no, you didn't. Did you?
Yeah.
You should wash your face again.
Why? What is it?
That's like for plants, and there might be like fertilizer in there. Boy, I feel underread.
Okay,
right now.
let's just move on.
It didn't get my face. It just got.
All right, well, let's get a little rash.
Oh, really? Okay.
Shit, I should move that. But scenario B, well, I don't know what to say about scenario B because then I would just be pissed off, and was. Signal when, you know.
Well, then I'll ask
Cover
you
your point.
to
Yeah.
apply it.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's right. This apartment is like in this weird liminal space between like it's set up to encourage like people to be here, and then there's deadly traps. It's like fucking Inspector Clouseau's house.
Right, so we're up to lesson 5 of A Course in Miracles. Lesson 5 is very short. It goes like this. I am never upset for the reason I think. Okay, so very short, might seem simple, but when you read this in the workbook, it's quite difficult to figure out what's going on and how to do it. So I'm just going to explain it. I'm going to simplify it for everybody. So this is how we do the exercise of lesson 5. First, search your mind for reasons that you are troubled, reasons that you are upset, right? Reasons that, you're not serene. Now ask yourself, what feeling is the result of that? What feeling are you having around that thought? Sadness, anger, anxiety, fear, what is it? Then we say to ourselves, I am not worried about this thing for the reason I think. And that's the lesson. Okay, so for example, sit here for a minute and search your mind for a reason that you're upset. Like, my mother's coming to visit from Australia. And, okay, so what am I feeling around that? Like anxiety, guilt that I haven't emailed her in a long time, like fear that she's going to bring up the same damn thing again. And then I say to myself, I'm not worried about my mother visiting for the reason I think. And that's it. And use whatever feeling it is. So maybe it's something else. Maybe it's, okay, I'm depressed because my husband just left me. And I'm feeling, so what feeling? I'm depressed. So we say to ourselves, I'm not depressed about my husband leaving for the reason I think. And you can do this with things big or small, as with every exercise, big or small, big or small. We don't discriminate. So it could be, again, I am annoyed that the sink is full of dirty dishes. So then we say to ourselves, I'm not annoyed about the dirty dishes for the reason I think, right? So big and small. That is lesson 5. That's how we do it. And do it for a minute, 3 or 4 times during the day at different times. So, what do you think, Marco? Try that.
Okay. Well, the first thing I was thinking, and then I will try it, was that, I guess, traditional psychoanalytic or, therapeutic technique would sort of end that. I mean, what's nice about this book is that it doesn't end a lot of sentences the way that Western psychology does, right? Because this would normally say something like, I'm not upset for the reasons I think. Instead, I am upset because of. Right? Western thinking is very invested in having the answer for everything at each time, rather than things being an open question as you go along.
Right. Yeah. This whole first part of the workbook is about dissolving illusions, dismantling. Later, we're going to rebuild, but that's absolutely true. Part of it is getting comfortable with the discomfort, getting uncomfortable, accepting being uncomfortable, not knowing that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you're right.
Well, the first thing I thought is the dishes are not dirty this week. They were last week.
So you were upset that I said that?
No, but I was like, wait a minute, didn't she notice? Okay.
No, I was thinking about my sink. But anyway.
I know.
Yeah. So you just went through a big thing.
I did. Yeah. So, right. I guess. Okay. So yeah, for that's. I keep forgetting this is sort of we haven't been down this place on V2, right? So yeah, I'm approaching 2 years divorce, something like that.
2 years already.
I think. Well, I'll tell you what. Definitely approaching 2 years, like from the last time I stayed in my old home, right? And so that my mind is sort of when that started.
So what would make you upset? Well, I mean, I remember you were furious about things for a while, heartbroken, sad, confused, angry.
I mean, I think
everything.
heartbroken was a lot more. I mean, I would be definitely furious in the moment of trying to talk things through, in the period leading up to when we actually split. But heartbroken was the much more predominant feeling, and so I am never heartbroken for the reason I think. Is that a fair way to apply this?
That's right. I am never heartbroken for the reason I think. Yeah. So I am not heartbroken about my wife leaving, or I'm not heartbroken about whatever you want to.
Right.
About her saying something to me.
Yeah. So then what would, and I know I just said that this is the problem with Western thinking, but what in this world, what am I heartbroken about?
Well, that comes in lesson 6.
Okay.
So we're going to just concentrate on this.
So I guess my experience at that time is that I felt heartbroken about everything. And it was like, there was just, it was so much. The entire world was a reminder of things that were either ruined or disappearing, right? Either.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's an awesome example. So then you can apply lesson 5 as well, because you were up, everything was ruined. So like, what was ruined? Like coffee, ice cream, like what?
That's interesting. Right.
Is that what you meant? Like,
I did.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's an example. Going to work was a whole different experience because, and maybe that's kind of almost too complicated, but going to work was something I did, and there was very little joy in the actual work, but the joy that I took from it is that I was contributing to our little family of 2. Right? And so now,
what was the meaning?
What am I doing here at this office?
So that's lesson 4. So then these thoughts do not mean anything. So there, you can use that as well. These thoughts don't mean anything, and I'm not upset for the reason. Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, the better example, or the more challenging example even, is that it was during this period that I was putting final revisions and edits onto my book, which in one reading is just an extended love letter to the woman I used to be married to. It's dedicated to her still. And so that was an interesting process to try to work with those poems while the person who was very much in many of them was a different person, because that
was a different person to you now, you mean?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know who she was unto herself because we were not seeing each other. But in my mind, she was half the person I knew and half the person I spoke to on the phone every couple of days to have a fight, about what we were doing and why weren't we trying this and trying that.
So then you would apply lesson 5. I'm never upset with her for the reason I think.
Yeah.
I'm never upset with whatever. What would she say? Like, she would say, I want money, I want you to do this. And
Yeah, I mean, later it became about, sort of lawyers and things like that, but it was more like, and this is a really fucked up way of thinking, if I'm being honest. Because X, Y, and Z happened, that means that every moment of the last 3.5 years is somehow nullified.
tainted, yeah.
And that's like magical thinking. It's like bad magical thinking. But like to think that,
Yeah, I've definitely been guilty of applying that thinking to a man, to a relationship. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to not feel in love with him anymore.
Interesting.
I wanted to just break that connection.
Okay.
So to think about it all being a lie,
Right.
or it all being nastiness, or whatever it is.
I hear you, and I can see on your face right now that you're almost like an in between about your conviction that was bad thinking. I mean, it's hard to feel differently about, something that intense.
Yeah.
So, like in this case, she accused me of having an affair. Right. Let's look at two scenarios. One I did, one I didn't. Right? Okay, so if I had slept with some other person, that would be shitty. But I'll tell you what, it doesn't have any bearing on the feelings and intensity of care and love that I had for my ex on her birthday, or on the day before her birthday, or 2 weeks prior to that. Every other day is not affected by that one experience. It just wasn't in my mind, right? It was very isolated. Maybe that's,
Well, now a lot of men say this. It doesn't change. It doesn't mean anything. Well, the thing is that that it would upset her.
Right.
That is what means something.
Right. And
But I hadn't thought of it the way you just said it. It doesn't change how much you care about her on her birthday, and how much you want her to have a good time, and how much thought and effort you put into making that day good, or whatever.
Right.
I see where you're coming from there. I hadn't quite thought about it that way. If we stay in the moment, then the birthday, you love her to here and back.
And not just because it's her birthday.
No, but just on that day, just on
Any
a day.
yeah.
Maybe it was just a beautiful Sunday, whatever.
Right,
You go for
right.
a walk, whatever. In that moment, on that day, any sort of yesterday doesn't matter.
Right.
But what matters was in the moment that you fucked another person. Right. At that moment, you didn't care that she would be upset. That's what women get upset about.
Right. And just to reiterate that this is a hypothetical.
This is hypothetical.
Right.
This is hypothetical.
Like, ooh, who did I fuck?
The proverbial you,
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what, now,
Yeah.
if she had come in and been like, yeah, you know what, I fucked your best friend. And that happened to me in a different relationship. So I can speak from a place of...
Oh, my God.
What,
someone just came in and said, hey, Marco, I fucked your best friend.
Well, she didn't refer to him as... He was a mutual best friend, actually, so it was even better.
I'm just imagining her coming in the door, though, and saying, how you doing, hon? Hey, I fucked your best friend. It was a good day.
I wish it was that way, because it would have been so much easier to be like, all right, this is done. Done, baby, done. Instead, it was like a crying admission,
Oh, God.
It was like, now we have to live with this, or try to.
Well, you see now, those thoughts don't mean anything. So you wouldn't have that would have become a thought form that you didn't need to hang on to. Anyway,
yeah,
I don't know where the hell we are in this.
No, we're still trying to find how using me as an example, how this could have been applied. And I will tell you that right now, this would be a very difficult situation to apply this rule. But I guess, the point is to try to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
But scenario B, I didn't fuck somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know what to say about scenario B, because then I would just be pissed off, and was. But I guess, okay, so scenario B, I didn't fuck somebody else. I'm still now in a position where I'm watching the woman I love completely change, in her mind, who I am, right?
Right.
I am changing before her eyes, and I have no control over that. And not just the form that is me, but the form that is us.
That is us, and that is the marriage, and that is the relationship, and that is the whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know how to draw a conclusion from that, but those are.
Well, I think it's just I sort of got. I'm not sure exactly where we're going, but I think we have lots of examples here about, and lots of sort of evidence here that our thoughts, don't mean anything. Like they're not true. Like she was thinking one way, and then she was thinking another way, and the difference in thinking came from things that may or may not be true.
Right.
These were your examples, scenario A, scenario B. She didn't actually know what was true. Nothing about all of this interaction and the stuff you were fighting about and upset about was real. Mm-hmm. I think this is what we've come up with here.
Yeah. And you know what? It was a good example because, and I think that anybody who's had a tough divorce can kind of, or a long tough divorce can kind of identify this. I know you've had a couple. I'm not sure how they were, how long they were. You already said that. But by the time you're into like lawyers are involved, and it's 6 months into the process of trying to get paperwork done.
Yeah, and I don't even actually think that's long. I mean, I know people 7 years have gone on.
Right.
But anyway,
I don't even, to be honest, like I asked my lawyer, I'm like, yo, where are we with this? By that time, everything is such an abstraction. Right. The fight that started it all. I almost like.
I know, it really is. It's like Jarndyce and Jarndyce in freaking Dickens.
Boy, I feel underread.
Okay,
right now.
let's just move on. But anyway, that's what that whole
ahead.
book is about. Yeah, is this law case, Jarndyce and Jarndyce, just takes on a life of its own until all the money is gone to lawyers. They're fighting over an inheritance.
This was about. I don't think this was Charles Dickens. I think this was about what happened in my relationship.
Well, it's about all of that. Lawyers get involved. It becomes an abstraction, and it takes on a life of its own. And your experience of the relationship has got nothing to do with with those mechanics.
Oh, especially with attorneys too, because because then language. We're sort of branching a bit, but okay. So then language becomes this very abstract thing, right? Because it's no longer a conversation about making someone whole again. Every piece of language is intended to execute, to accomplish an effect, right? It's very strategic, and it's very, this, that, and the other thing. And for this reason, now we're in a world of language that we had never used with each other.
Oh, yeah,
right?
That's very interesting.
Through these proxy speakers, and particularly, in our case, very bad proxy speakers. Yeah, so it's funny because at the, I don't know, like in I would like to say act 3, but let's say like act 19 out of 30, I felt like we have gone so far from the thing that caused us to have this conflict. We are so distant, and it's so abstract now. Why don't we just go and have dinner and talk now,
Yeah. Well, I think we're right on the lesson because you're describing now another layer of thought that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's yet another, right? I mean, it's yet another one. And that layer of the lawyers and the different language, and you don't even understand the language, it's just another layer of meaninglessness. But yeah, that's interesting. So once you saw that, I guess you felt like you noticed that finally. You noticed this is meaningless. This is nonsense. Let's actually go and actually be in one another's presence and feel each other's spirits and actually feel what the truth is.
Right.
Which is what we're trying to do here. So and applying lesson 5, I'm never upset for the reason I think. So if you're talking through lawyers and you're upset that she wants to put this clause in, like you're not really upset about it. You're upset because your heart and your spirit and your relations, and
right, because at that point you're talking about the future, right? Like we're creating clauses to better how things will be for the two of us 2 years from now, which is the opposite of how. Well, it's sort of actually darkly analogous to how you talk and think in a marriage, right? How will we be our best selves in 2 years.
Right. Will we buy the house? Will we have the kid? Yeah.
Will we start the business? Whatever it is.
Mm.
And now the opposite of that is like, I need to make sure the future me gets through this okay and, lands softly and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then, it could be, I want to make sure that the future you is in pain because you hurt me, so there's all of that, which is...
Reserve that content for something else.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I think we've got really great examples of how these thoughts don't mean anything. Lesson 4 and lesson 5. I'm never upset for the reason I think.
Okay, so tell me this though, as as like a spiritual advisor and somebody who is closer to this text than I am. How does somebody who is, let's say that I was at this part of this book during those events, right? How would I, aside from just applying it, almost mechanically, like how would I find comfort in this lesson or this moment? Like how would I apply it in this situation? I know how I would apply it, I guess, but how would it solve something for me? How would it help me?
So it would, one hopes, make you feel serene and detached from the thoughts that are causing you these bad feelings. Mm-hmm. So things are going around and around and everyone's yelling at you and, you're saying, okay, these thoughts don't mean anything. They're apart from me. They're not real. So I'm just going to sit here, breathe, connect to spirit, connect to my heart, and just understand that they don't mean anything. So hopefully when you really see that, when you really believe it, you just calm down. And that's going to help you get through it. You're right. That's going to help you like read your freaking divorce proceedings or whatever.
Yeah.
That's going to help you focus at work. That's going to help you get some rest. That's going to help you sleep,
Right.
And then if you're looking at lesson 5, I'm never upset for the reason I think. So if she's yelling at you on the phone and saying, I'm going to take half your money,
right.
You say, okay, that makes me feel...
Half of 0 is still 0.
I know, that's what my lawyer used to say to me, half of 0 is 0.
Right.
I'm like, all right, give it to him then.
Yeah.
When I'd start to get like, what if I...
Yeah.
Well, you don't have it, so half of 0 is 0.
Is that what inspired you to get a law degree?
What?
That experience of dealing with lawyers through a divorce.
No, I got my law degree back when I was like 20.
Okay.
Yeah, back in Australia. But so you can apply, I'm never upset for the reason I think. And you can, again, similarly, separate your true self, your true happiness from the proceedings that are going on around you.
Interesting.
You don't have to be upset about this anymore.
Mm-hmm. One experience from that time actually I think is relevant to this because looking back, something that I did during that time, which I couldn't even figure out why I was doing it. But we talk in this book so far about the things in this room mean nothing, my thoughts mean nothing. So basically, on day 0 of this divorce, she's like, don't stay in the apartment anymore. Go, right? And I did. And the first night I just went to a hotel, right? What else am I going to do? And then instead of at any point seeking out like a place that I would stay or look for a new apartment or whatever, I just Airbnb'd I Airbnb'd for like 6 months. And I'm not talking about a 6-month stretch in someone's apartment. I'm talking about 1 week at an apartment every week for 6 months. And so having someone else's possessions and things at home be totally switched up every week was an interesting way of surrounding myself by things that I didn't have any feeling about. Because that dude's couch, I don't know the history of that couch or that dude's painting on his wall, right? And so that was almost therapeutic in a weird way.
Yeah, I can
sort of
see
like
that.
stepping into other people's lives that I knew nothing about and then leaving it.
Right.
Yeah, it's the most next to therapy, it's the most expensive form of therapy that you can do, I think. Anyway, no, that's I can see why that's a crucial lesson.
Yeah. So good. So I hope we've helped everyone.
Yeah, and I hope that that people have less, traumatic things that they can apply this to. 'Cause this works
Hopefully
at the
it's
grocery
just someone
store
was
as well.
slow at Starbucks. Yeah, exactly.
Right, slow at Starbucks. Oh my God, Starbucks. Starbucks, if you're listening, you can sponsor this podcast and we can get to the bottom of all that together, okay? We are always open for that. All right. We
Okay.
good?
Yeah, let's everybody please come back for lesson 6 when we will find out why we're actually upset. We're going to give you the answer to that.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. This episode of Miracles Manhattan is a co-production of Wild Stories and Rogue Signal Studios. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review and maybe a comment. It takes just a second and it helps us reach a broader audience.
And if you have any questions for us, email us at miraclesinmanhattan@gmail.com. We may be able to answer your question on a future episode. If you want to join our Facebook community where everyone is walking through A Course in Miracles together, you can find us at A Course in Miracles with the Wild Reverend. And you can also find us on Twitter at Wild Manhattan.